Can you explain why the Justice Department has decided to take over the defense in this libel case involving the president?
This is done frequently. It's been done for presidents. It's been done for congressmen. The normal process was followed in this particular case you're talking about. And there's particular cases that are right on point.
Attorney General Bill Barr standing by his Department of Justice's move to defend President Trump in a defamation suit brought by advice columnist E. Jean Carroll.
All right, here to react, Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, is this standard?
It's not standard, Brian, for the federal government to assume the defense of an employee of the federal government who makes a statement that is unrelated to his official duties. It is standard. President Bush was defended, President Obama was defended, and the Attorney General is right. Members of Congress have been defended when they do something or say something related to their official duties and they're sued for it. But the president's comments, "I didn't rape her because she's not my type," is hardly related to his official duties. So that's why it's an improper use of the government's tools to enter the case. Now, when the government enters the case, it not only pays for the lawyers to defend the president, it not only moves the case from state court to federal court, but the government becomes the defendant. The president would no longer be the defendant. And when the government is the defendant, the case goes away because the case is based on defamation, and the federal government cannot be sued for defamation. So this is not only an improper use of the two statutes here, the Westfall Act and the Tort Claims Act, it's a violation of the due process rights of the plaintiff.
Right. Judge, let's talk a little bit about something we've been talking about for, it seems like, a very long time, and we're wondering when it's going to finally come to a head or an end, and that is the fact that Bill Barr spoke to NBC. They ran part of the interview yesterday and said that criminal charges may be coming soon in the Durham probe, but we've heard, we've kind of gotten that inclination for a while. The closer you get to the election, if there are going to be accusations and charges, the more political it looks. So what's it look like to you? Is it going to come out before the election? Is it going to come out after the election? Are people going to get in big trouble, jail, stuff like that? What?
So the Department of Justice has a rule not to issue an indictment within 60 days of an election if the indictment is of a public official or is likely to affect the outcome of the election. This rule was tossed around quite a bit in 2016 when Jim Comey, within 60 days. Yes, we are inside 60 days. So theoretically, if they follow that rule, Steve, they won't issue any indictments until after Election Day. This rule was tossed about in 2016 when Jim Comey asserted himself in the election about Hillary Clinton within 60 days of the election. Now, who are they going to indict? Well, they have a cooperating witness who's the young lawyer who pleaded guilty to altering a document. There's no written plea agreement, but we can assume from his guilty plea that he is their cooperating witness who's giving them, that is, he's giving the prosecutors a roadmap about who was involved in misleading the FISA court in order to torment and surveil the Trump campaign.
Do you trust that all things will be above board in this?
If the indictments are held until after Election Day, I do. The U.S. Attorney in Connecticut, John Durham, has an excellent reputation for intellectual honesty and fidelity to the law, and those of us in the legal community know that, and I don't know anybody that disagrees with that. If he holds his fire until after Election Day, whatever it is, whether it's no indictments, whether it's an indictment of some high-profile person in the Obama administration, if he holds his fire until after Election Day, he will have done the country a service by prosecuting the people he thinks he should prosecute in a way that does not affect the outcome of the election.
Pete Williams gave a real good, thorough interview with the Attorney General Barr, who outlined exactly what he think went wrong in the whole probe. It's definitely worth reading or listening to. Thanks, Judge. Great to talk to you.
Brian, I wore a white shirt for you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's closer and closer. We're going to get back to the pinstripes and the tie, Judge, and then life will be good again.